"Get that truck off this street." She didn't shout. She didn't have to. The confidence in her voice made it sound less like a request and more like an order she expected everyone to obey. She stood in the middle of the road wearing a navy blazer, oversized sunglasses, and heels that looked completely out of place on cracked asphalt. Her phone was already pointed at my truck, recording as if she had just caught someone committing a crime. My old Ford F-250 was parked exactly where it had been almost every morning for the last 10 years. The trailer wasn't attached, the toolboxes were locked, and the truck was covered with the usual layer of dust from yesterday's construction job. She lowered the phone for a second and looked directly at me. "Commercial vehicles aren't allowed on HOA streets. If you don't move it immediately, I'll have it towed." I leaned against the tailgate without saying a word. Experience had taught me that people who talked with that much certainty usually hadn't checked the facts. Then she delivered the sentence that changed everything. "You don't own this street." I almost smiled. Because the truth was, I owned far more than she could possibly imagine. About 10 minutes later, a county deputy slowly pulled onto the road with his lights off. She walked straight toward him before I even had the chance, confidently explaining that I had ignored multiple HOA violations and refused to remove my truck from what she called community property. The deputy listened patiently. Then he turned toward me. "Do you have any paperwork?" "I do." I handed him a folder I had prepared days earlier. He opened it, glanced over the documents, then looked up at the street sign before checking the papers again. A small smile appeared on his face. At that moment, I knew exactly how this conversation was about to end. But to understand why, you have to go back almost 40 years. In 1988, my father saw opportunity where everyone else saw failure. The local mill had shut down. Families were moving away. Houses were selling for almost nothing, and most investors wanted absolutely nothing to do with the neighborhood. My father looked past the empty homes. He noticed something almost nobody else paid attention to. The road. It had already been built. Utility lines were already installed. But for one reason or another, the county had never officially accepted ownership of it. Legally, it remained a private access road shared between the original property owners. That tiny detail would become incredibly important decades later. Dad bought the first house for less than the price of a brand new pickup truck. A few years later, another neighbor decided to retire. He bought that property too. Then another family moved away. Another house became available. There were never bidding wars or flashy, for sale, signs. Just quiet conversations, fair offers, signed paperwork, and recorded deeds. Little by little, our family ended up owning nearly every property along both sides of the street. 8 lots in total. Most people assumed the houses were the valuable part. They weren't. The real value was the strip of asphalt connecting every one of them. When my father passed the properties down to me 5 years ago, ownership of every parcel became unified under one name. Mine. From that day forward, I wasn't just maintaining the road. I legally controlled it. Whenever potholes appeared, I repaired them myself. When heavy rain filled the drainage ditches, I cleared them. Every winter before sunrise, I plowed the snow so everyone living nearby could safely get in and out. No HOA paid for that. No county crews showed up. It had always been my responsibility. And I never complained about it. Everything stayed peaceful until a luxury subdivision appeared next to my northern property. Within months, empty pastureland transformed into expensive homes with stone entrance columns, decorative iron gates, perfect landscaping, and strict neighborhood rules. The development called itself Cedar Vale Estates. Inside those gates, the HOA controlled almost everything. Paint colors, fence designs, mailbox styles, holiday decorations. If someone painted their front door the wrong shade of blue, they'd probably receive a violation notice before dinner. Their entrance happened to sit only a few yards away from my private road. Close enough that visitors naturally assumed both roads belonged to the same neighborhood. That misunderstanding became someone's very expensive mistake. A few weeks after families started moving in, I found an envelope sitting inside my mailbox. Heavy cream-colored paper. Official HOA letterhead. It claimed my work truck violated community standards because commercial vehicles weren't allowed inside Cedar Vale. I laughed, then tossed it in a drawer. A second notice arrived. This one quoted specific HOA bylaws and warned me to comply. Instead of ignoring it again, I politely mailed back copies of my property deed, the original subdivision plat, and the recorded easement clearly showing where Cedar Vale ended, and where my property began. I honestly thought that would settle everything. Instead, a third certified letter arrived threatening daily fines if I failed to remove my truck. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. Someone wasn't simply confused. Someone genuinely believed they had authority over land they didn't own. And if they were willing to send certified legal threats, I had a feeling they wouldn't stop there. I didn't argue with the third letter. I drove straight to the county recorder's office. If someone wanted to play the paperwork game, I was going to bring the entire file cabinet. I requested certified copies of everything: the original 1986 plat map, the private access easement agreement, the current tax records showing unified ownership, and an old maintenance affidavit my father had filed years earlier confirming that the road had never been dedicated to the county. The documents were crystal clear. Cedar Vale's legal boundary stopped about 40 feet before my asphalt even began. There was no overlap, no shared ownership, no gray area. I drafted a single-page response and kept it professional. I explained the boundary in plain English and stated that any attempt to fine, tow, or interfere with vehicles parked on my property would be considered trespass and unlawful interference. I mailed it certified and waited. 3 days later, I walked outside and found a bright orange notice tucked under my windshield wiper. Final warning: vehicle subject to immediate tow. No official letterhead, just bold print and a signature. I stood there for a few seconds looking at it. That little orange paper changed the situation completely. Up until then, it had been annoying. Now it had become actionable. Instead of calling the HOA, I went to the hardware store. I bought 2 reflective aluminum signs and had them printed with a simple message: Private road, no HOA enforcement or towing authority. At the bottom, I added the recorded document number so anyone could verify it themselves. I installed 1 sign at each entrance to the block and set both posts in concrete. No dramatic confrontation, just clear boundaries. Then I mounted 2 security cameras under the corner house. They covered the entire roadway, the signs, and every vehicle entering from the direction of Cedar Vale. The footage automatically uploaded to cloud storage. Finally, I called the sheriff's non-emergency line and calmly explained that I was concerned someone might attempt an unlawful tow on a privately owned road. The dispatcher logged the call. That was all I needed. The next morning, I saw her standing near the entrance again. Phone pressed against her ear. A few minutes later, a patrol unit turned onto my road. I left the truck exactly where it was. The cameras were recording. The survey stakes were still visible along the property line. I was ready. She reached the deputy before I did. This vehicle has ignored multiple HOA violations, she said confidently. Commercial trucks are prohibited on neighborhood streets. The deputy listened without interrupting. Then he asked one simple question: is this road publicly maintained? For the first time, she hesitated. It's part of the community entrance corridor, she replied. That wasn't my question. The silence that followed was almost uncomfortable. I walked over and handed him the folder. He returned to his cruiser, entered the parcel numbers into the system, and spent a few minutes reviewing the records. Neither of us said a word. When he stepped back out, he looked directly at her. This road is privately owned. She blinked. He continued, according to county records, it belongs to him. Any tow company entering this property without his authorization could be trespassing. Her posture changed immediately. Our authority extends to maintaining community standards, she insisted. The deputy shook his head. Not outside your recorded boundary. I could almost hear the air leaving the argument. She looked from the deputy to me and back again, searching for some technicality that would rescue her position. There wasn't one. Before leaving, the deputy handed my documents back to me. Keep these with you, he said quietly. They'll save everyone time if this comes up again. I thanked him. He drove away. She stood there for another few seconds, then turned around and walked back toward the gates without saying another word. I thought it was over. It wasn't. 3 days later, every homeowner in Cedar Vale received a notice for an emergency HOA meeting verification. A copy somehow found its way into my mailbox. I decided to attend, not because I wanted a fight, because I wanted the truth on the record. And that meeting would become the moment the entire neighborhood realized exactly where their HOA's authority ended. I arrived at the clubhouse 5 minutes early carrying the same folder that had already settled the issue with the deputy. No expensive suit, no attorney beside me, just a pressed shirt, work boots, and every document I could possibly need. By the time the meeting started, nearly every seat was filled. Homeowners whispered to each other, trying to figure out why an emergency meeting had been called over a single pickup truck. Karen stood at the front of the room with the confidence she always seemed to have. She thanked everyone for coming and began talking about protecting property values, preserving neighborhood standards, and maintaining the appearance of Cedar Vale Estates. Listening to her, you'd think the outcome had already been decided. Then she mentioned my truck. According to her, the board had simply been enforcing the community rules. When she finished, I quietly raised my hand. If there's no objection, I said, I'd like to show everyone a few public records. The room went silent. She hesitated for a moment before nodding. I connected my laptop to the projector and pulled up the county's GIS property map. A red line appeared across the screen. This, I said, is the official subdivision boundary. Then I zoomed in. The room leaned forward. Cedar Vale ends here. I pointed to the line. My private road begins here. The distance between them wasn't inches. It was nearly 40 feet. Next, I displayed the original recorded plat, followed by the easement agreement and the county tax records showing that every parcel along my road belonged to me. No opinions, no assumptions, just public records. Then I explained something many of the homeowners had never been told. The HOA has every right to enforce its rules inside the neighborhood. I paused. But once you cross this boundary, those rules no longer apply. Several people exchanged confused looks. One homeowner finally raised his hand. So, we've been sending violation notices to someone who isn't even part of the HOA. Exactly. The room became noticeably quieter. A few heads slowly turned toward Karen. The HOA's attorney, who was attending through a video call, cleared his throat before speaking. Based on the documents presented, he said, the board should immediately stop all enforcement activity outside the recorded subdivision boundaries. That single sentence changed the entire atmosphere. Nobody argued. Nobody objected. The facts were simply too clear. I could have pushed even harder. I had copies of every notice they had mailed. I had photos of the warning placed on my truck. I had security footage. There was enough evidence to start a civil case if I wanted one. But lawsuits cost everyone time and money. That wasn't what I wanted. I wanted one thing: the problem to end. A few days later, I sent the board one final letter. It contained 3 simple requests. First, acknowledge in writing that the HOA had no authority over my road or my property. Second, withdraw every violation notice that had ever been issued against me and confirm that no fines would be collected. Third, permanently remove my address from every HOA mailing list and compliance database. I gave them 10 business days. They responded on the 8th. The envelope contained exactly what I had asked for. A signed acknowledgement, a formal withdrawal of every violation, confirmation that my property had been removed from their records. There was no apology, no excuses, just compliance. To make sure this confusion could never happen again, I recorded an official notice with the county identifying the road as privately owned and referenced every supporting document. I even updated my entrance signs with the recording number so anyone could verify it for themselves. After that, life returned to normal. My truck stayed parked in the same spot where it had always been. Every winter, I cleared the snow before sunrise just like my father had done for years. The drainage ditches stayed clean. The road stayed maintained. The deputy occasionally drove past on routine patrol, slowed near the entrance, and gave me a small nod before continuing on. Professional courtesy. Nothing more needed to be said. Karen remained on the HOA board, but something had changed. She no longer stopped people outside the neighborhood. No more warning letters appeared in my mailbox. No more threats. No more claims that my road belonged to the HOA. The boundaries had finally been respected. Looking back, I realized the biggest mistake she made wasn't sending those letters. It was assuming confidence could replace facts. She believed speaking loudly made her right. It didn't. In the end, I never raised my voice. I never insulted her. I never broke the law. I simply knew exactly what I owned. And I had the paperwork to prove it. Because property disputes aren't won by who argues the loudest. They're won by deeds. By surveys. By recorded documents. When someone confidently tells you that your property belongs to them, don't answer with emotion. Answer with evidence. Every single time.